Ready when you are. Hi, Facebook friends. Helen Arcantu here, CEO of the YWCA of Northern New Jersey. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am so happy to be spending this evening with you. This is a very special conversation, an evening edition of YWTV. We are so thrilled to be able to showcase very special person today, and also being that this is Black History Month, and also being that the YWCA, as you know, we have for years now on Thursdays been Share the Mic Now with Black women in our community to elevate their voices and their stories. But this is a really special one because we've got three amazing women. So let's just jump right in. We know that Black History Month is a time to celebrate Black history. Black history is American history. It should be, we know, everywhere, taught in our schools. And these are things that we're working on, especially in a time when, unfortunately, we have parts of our country that are working against this. We at the YWCA are committed to sharing these stories, sharing history, and celebrating. And so tonight is really in that spirit of celebration for sure. We want to educate ourselves and also learn and be inspired. As we said, tonight is really about dreaming big, achieving your goals, facing personal challenges, overcoming setbacks. And we get to do that with, as I said, three amazing women. But the conversation really focuses at the core, thanks to our guest, who's a New York Times bestselling author, Shelley Archambault, who I have to say, I started to learn of her book because of Rona Vega, who's on the call, who, when she read it months ago, and I know I'm one of many in the circle that just started getting texts and calls and conversations because her brain was just firing, from the, from being inspired from your words. So that's what brought us here today. We know that you are no stranger to adversity. You've shared your story so beautifully in this book, and that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. And for those of you watching, go get the book. you're gonna meet the person, but go get the book. And I know you're going to want to do that even, more so after talking today if you haven't read it. Before we focus and talk more about Shelley, I want to introduce you to our friends that are on the screen, and they are friends of the YW. You've met them on YW TV before. You've seen them honor, Rona's been honored at our events. Shalisa has spoken at our gala and shared her story. I personally am inspired by both of them. They've helped me create programs in my mind just from conversations with them, and we've, I think, changed a lot of lives because of their great talents that they have lent to our organizations. And so with that, I want to welcome Rona Vega, who is the founder and CEO of Parent Matters. Through her organization, she provides educational tools and resources to families and children from marginalized communities that empower them to succeed. And also we have with us, as I said, our other friend, female entrepreneur, Shalisa McNeil Burgess, founder and CEO of Freya, a company that she created beautifully designed bracelets to decrease the intensity of hot flashes for women experiencing menopause. Both of these women are, as I said, very close and dear to the YW. And so we're so happy to have them with us. And they both have been so inspired by this book again, which is why we thought it was great to have a conversation that kind of goes both ways in terms of, everyone being able to ask questions and to be inspired further together. So now let's chat about and tell you a little bit more about Shelley herself, who is not only an author that we obviously are here inspired by her book, but she is a Fortune 500 board member and a former CEO of Metric Stream. And we can't wait to hear about the journey to both of those places, because we know that there's not a lot of representation of women and not a lot of representation of women of color in either of those seats. And so it's just amazing that we have the presence to hear from someone who has achieved both. She just happened to be honored this week, coincidentally, at the New York Stock Exchange by Black women on boards, which congratulations. How exciting that must have been. She is an experienced, as I said, CEO and board director with a track record of accomplishments in building brands, high performance teams, and organizations. She currently serves on the boards of Verizon, Nordstrom's, Roper Technologies, and Okta. She is also a strategic advisor to Forbes, Ignite, and to the president of Arizona State University, and she serves on 2 national nonprofit boards, Catalyst and Braven. As I said, she's the former CEO of MetricStream, a Silicon Valley-based governance, risk, and compliance software company, and built it into a global market leader with over 1,200 employees serving customers around the world. She was named the second most influential African American by IT by Business Insider. She was ranked one of the 100 most influential business leaders in America by Newsmax, and that same year also received the NCWIT Simmons Innovator Award from the National Center for Women and Information Technologies. She is the author of the book that, as I shared, inspired Rona and Tralisa so greatly in their business, Unapologetically Ambitious, Take Risks, Break Barriers, and Create Success on Your Own Terms. And it's a book that helps professionals achieve their aspirations and create the life that they want. Wow. And so we are so thrilled to have you here. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Helen. That was quite an introduction. Thank you.
Well, you clearly earned it all, and I always love to read the introduction of the women that we have on our video podcast here, because, as I always say, as women, we sometimes don't step into really like soaking in what we've done, and sometimes it's hard for us to listen to, and we're like, oh, move on, move on. But my goodness, I'm so grateful, that you could be here. And I just have to start by asking you, tell us about the title of your book. Unapologetically Ambitious. I mean, that is confidence, in action.
Right. Well, it's interesting, Helen, because I had the entire book written and I had no title. And how can you publish a book and not have a title? I was really struggling. I knew I wanted the word ambition in it, but I couldn't figure out what else, right? I could go all these opportunities, all these things. And then I was meeting with a set of friends, all happened to be women. And we were talking about apologizing. And I said, I feel like women are raised from the cradle to apologize. Because we apologize, yes, we've done something wrong, but that's probably only 5 or 10% of the time. The other 90 to 95% of the time that we say, I'm sorry, is because we're trying to make the rest of the world feel better. We apologize to ease tension, to show we care and empathy, right? We say we're sorry to make sure that people don't feel bad, right? We say I'm sorry almost like people use salt, right? You add salt to make things taste better. Well, we use I'm sorry to make the world feel better. Well, that's not our job. And we've got to stop saying I'm sorry, because when we say it so much, people think we really are sorry. And that's what it hit me. I was like, that's it. Unapologetically ambitious, because everyone has the right to be ambitious and no one should have to apologize for it.
For sure. We bring together groups of women regularly at the YW, and we often have this conversation about apologizing. I mean, that is so on point, and I'm sure something that every woman listening can relate to. And it's so wonderful to kind of have this like firm stance of being unapologetically ambitious. I love that. So let's start talking about your journey. We know that from your book that you shared that you set your goal to become a CEO from when you were a teenager. I mean, and how amazing that, I mean, I know my husband always talks about his goal as a kid was to be the drummer for the Rolling Stones, right? But that didn't happen for him. So, how did your dream as a child end up happening? Talk to
Oh,
us a
goodness.
little bit about that journey and how making that come to fruition.
Well, certainly. So, first, I was I was very fortunate in that I had a guidance counselor that actually asked the next question. So here I am, you're a junior in high school, right? And you have that obligatory conversation with the guidance counselor. Do you want to go to college? The answer is yes. In my family, that wasn't even an option. You are going to college. Second, she said, well, what do you want to do when you graduate from college? And I was like, I have no idea. I grew up in a family of very modest means. All I wanted was to be able to earn enough money so that I could keep my thermostat at 72 degrees, that I could eat out in restaurants and travel, because those were all things I couldn't do, right?
Mm.
And she said, okay, got it. But what do you like to do? And I said, oh, that's easy. It's clubs. I'm in everything. I'm in American Field Service, National Honor Society, right? I'm even a Girl Scout, but like don't tell anybody. Uh, but more than that, I liked leading them. I was president of the French Club, and I was vice president of American Field Service. I was secretary of the National Honor Society. I had all these roles. And she said, well, clubs are like business. You pull people together and you get things done. And I said, oh, okay, I like clubs, so I'll go into business. And you know what? I like leading these clubs. So I looked up, and the people who led businesses were called CEOs. So I said, okay, I'm going to go be a CEO. I mean, honestly, it was that audacious and that naive. Because honestly, Helen, I had no idea what a CEO really did. But I'm a very goal oriented person because I learned early in life that the odds weren't in my favor. So
Mm.
if I wasn't intentional about trying to get things, I wasn't going to get them. I just knew it wasn't going to happen for me. So now that I had this goal, it became the focus. Okay, I'm going to be a CEO. So now I've got to work a plan to make that happen. And that's what really drove it. When you say, how did it happen? Through a lot of attention, a lot of trade offs, a lot of hard choices, right? There was a lot of work around it, taking a lot of help along the way. But most of all, it was staying focused on the goal. It was really staying focused on the goal.
Wow, there's so much in what you just said, so much in there. We work with so many young women also at the YW, and I know our girls team is watching, and I hope that they play this back for our young women. First of all, it really does speak to the fact that someone like a high school guidance counselor can have that kind of impact on your life and feed you that kind of information, which is why programs like Rona's are so key and so important for making those connections for our youth to help them dream and help
Mhm.
them envision, because as we always say is you only know what you know, and so if you're not exposed to more, then you won't know that there's more out there. So that's so amazing. And also, you being able to kind of share about being focused and keeping that goal in mind every step of the way, and that kind of a dream from your youth can actually become your future success in life, and that there is the ability to kind of see it all the way through with intention and tenacity. So thank you so much for sharing that, because that's such an inspiration for all of us of all ages, for sure. So, Rona and Shalisa, I know that the two of you were, so inspired by this book. And, you are both entrepreneurs. You're both connected to the YW on lots of different places, but one of them is through our YWE 360 Business Essentials program called Eureka, which is specifically focused on helping women entrepreneurs launching their businesses and providing access by a step-by-step course to give them some coaching, some mentoring, exactly what, Shelley's kind of talking about that started it for her, and along the way. So talk to us a little bit about, for the two of you, so we can, engage Shelley in the conversation a bit about the choices that you both made and how they impacted, your career decisions, similar to what Shelley's talking about.
I would just like to say, what was really interesting, even though throughout my junior high school career, I guess you'd call it, I was always in the advanced classes. However, what I did not have was one of those like nurturing guidance counselors, which I think make a huge difference. And so by the time I got to college, though, my college advisor became that. Like anything that was very focused. So my major in college was political science, and I was going to go to law school. Right, I was really into it. I was like, I'm going to law school, right? And every program that gave me exposure to a myriad of careers and included the legal field, she made sure I was in it. And that made a huge difference because then I was able to pivot and go, yeah, after a few of those mock, like trials and going down and visiting court systems, I'm like, I'm not sure this is for me, primarily because I got the opportunity for immersion. So I think that I agree with you, Shelley. Like, just having that one person give you something to spur you into, like, what do you want to do? And you didn't have to know every aspect of it to know these are my strengths. I'm going to pour my strengths into what my passion is for my vocation. But I don't think that it's something that our children, especially our young Black women in school, I teach, and I was teaching at some of the community colleges, and I know that those young people did not have that. And so I'm just wondering, what do you think we can, because I'm an educator, I'm always like inspiring my students, but I think that's something that we could do more of, because I think that they're missing that in terms of careers. They are very limited in their ideas of what careers are available. So, yeah, that's my point.
Well, that's a good, really good point that you're saying that, Shalisa. And first of all, I just got to say thank you to you, Shelly, and you, Helen, for making this all happen, and Shalisa for calling me a couple of weeks ago and saying, "Have you read this book?" And I'm like, "Yes." So thank you for all of you for making this happen. And when we talk about guidance and guidance counselors, it's probably why I do what I do, and because it is a hit or miss. Some kids kind of stand out and get a little bit more attention, and others and we just got to make the net wider. And when I think about my own story, I had even my ex-husband told me I was going to be a CEO, which I thought was really interesting. And that's probably the best compliment he ever gave me. But as I meet CEOs in my lifetime, Helen, Shelley, Shalisa, and so many other women in these last 10 years, I look at them and I say, wow, they look like they kind of get sleep at night. I had this enormous fear of applying for certain jobs in my life. And I became a young mom, but still, I thought that if I became a CEO, in my mind, which is crazy, but now to look back at it, that I would probably be dead in a year. That I thought you had to do so much to get that title, and I tell that story because there are probably young people listening and wondering, and that fear can just really and then I was recently on a boat cruise around New York with Michelle, who's the CEO of Dress for Success, and I thought she didn't look at her phone one time. Like she's actually living a regular life, and so we can really get caught up in the syndrome of the imposter syndrome, and also just fears that can make you feel like you don't belong and you don't belong here. And that's why nurturing these young people is really important, and the early exposure, because like you said, Shalisa, it's really important to be able to see what you don't want either.
Mhm.
So that's really important. So your book, though, it just hit me in so many different ways. Like I've read it twice, I've listened to it once. It is like my manual now. So and it's so funny, when I was reading it in August, I think you were actually speaking. I looked you up, and you're the first person I've ever reached out to ever on LinkedIn. And I looked you up, and you were speaking in the Bahamas, and my cruise was just leaving the Bahamas. And I said to my husband, "Can we stay?" And he's like, "No, we can't stay." But it's so impactful, and I'm glad you're saying that you wrote the book without a title, because listen, I feel like I have 16 books inside of me and I don't have a title. And so that encourages me as well, and hopefully many people listening, about just get it on paper. And can I ask you this? Well, how were you inspired to write the book, and why did you write the book?
Hmm. Throughout my career, Rona, I've tried to be very accessible. I still am, right? I responded to you on LinkedIn um, because I was in tech. I was in tech in the late 70s, early 80s, right? There weren't women in tech. There weren't a lot of people of color in tech. And doing the kinds of things I was doing, there definitely weren't many of us. And so when people reached out and they wanted to pick my brain, hear my story, etc., I tried to respond and I tried to meet with them and I tried to share because I wanted them to say, hey, listen, if I can do it, you can do it, right? It was, if I can do it, you can do it. But as I took on more and more responsibility throughout my career, I still respond, but I can't meet with everyone. And it frankly broke my heart. I'm like, oh, but I want to be able to do this. So I said, you know what? When I get to phase two, when I pass the baton on my full time CEO role, I'm going to take the time to write it down. I'm going to write down how to get what you want out of life. Because life is hard. And people don't tell you life is hard. They don't. And so all of a sudden it becomes hard. You're facing a tough challenge or whatever it might be, and you think, oh my God, this is so hard. I'm not cut out for it because it's obviously easy for everybody else. And then you stop. And that's ridiculous. It's hard for everyone. Just go get help. So I wanted to share, hey, here's what I've learned. Here's what works. Here's what doesn't. So that more people can achieve their aspirations. Because one of the things that I've seen throughout my career is there are way too many people, and women and people of color over index, way too many people that don't get the opportunity to contribute to even half of their capability. And that is a shame. That is just a shame. And I want more people to actually be able to contribute and to achieve their overall aspirations. So I wrote the book because I wanted to share, here's how to do it. Because I just didn't see many books out there that were frankly open, transparent, and frankly direct. That's who I am. I'm open, direct, and transparent. And so I just tried to say, hey, here's what it is. Here's what works. Here's what doesn't. Here's what was hard. Here's where I made mistakes. I mean, I wanted to share all of that so people could say there's nothing special about me. So if I can do it, you can do it.
Well, I would beg to differ that what is definitely special about you is you being that open book, not only writing a book, but being an open book and sharing all those details. Because as you said, we are socialized as women to keep it all to ourselves because it's so hard to succeed that we feel like if anyone sees our flaws, that it will in some ways, make us, less powerful and have less strength. But I love you flipping that narrative and really focusing that the strength really does come from that vulnerability and creating that, um, universality. Is that a word? But that, connecting us all, in that way. And especially, so important. I mean, it's, we know the numbers are in the spaces where you have succeeded are low for women, but even more so for, women of color. And so, you really are creating a space for everyone to see themselves. Thank you so much for doing that. I see Tammy, who's another friend of the YW, and is saying thank you for caring and sharing herself. She's, that this is really unique. But we would love to see this be much more of, the standard, so that we can all, win together and definitely make sure that we are seeing, we know that representation matters, but we do not have enough representation.
Yeah, because you can't be what you can't see.
See,
exactly. You just can't. So this is so important, this conversation.
So Shalisa.
Yes.
Tell us, I know you have a question you want to jump in with. Share it, please.
Well, actually, so before we got on, I sort of said it to Shelly, so I'm just going to rephrase that. I'm a female entrepreneur, and your story highlighted for me the missing link in my business strategy. Because I didn't realize that having a business plan is more like the overview. And what you sort of really expounded on significantly was like strategic planning with a step-by-step. You called it a blueprint a couple of times. And I noticed that that's like, I was trying to figure out what part am I missing, because it always felt like, I know what I'm doing. I can have these conversations, but the clear steps on how to get from, starting with the beginning with the end in mind, like I didn't know that I was missing that part. And I think a lot of women of color or women in general, who are starting businesses or taking that entrepreneurial route, we might just have the vision in mind, not necessarily the strategic plan to get there. So, can you talk more about the missing resources from the Black female high level professional experience that you have, and how women can work smarter instead of harder in their endeavors, and any tips on how to create actionable goals that go above and beyond a to-do list? Because I think we're really great about, like, here's my to-dos, but a to-do list is not a strategic plan to get to the end goal.
Yeah, it's really a great set of questions there, Shalisa, because let me start with the goal piece, because that's really where it starts. People will come to me all the time and say, "Oh, Shelley, I have the opportunity to do X or Y or Z, right? Which one should I do?" And my first question is always the same. Well, what do you want to be doing like 5, 10 years from now? And they come back and say, "Oh, I'm not sure." Then I give them the harsh answer, which is, then it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter.
Wow.
If you don't have a path that you're trying to take, then any job will do, right? So,
Right.
and you sit there and say,
Wow.
but wait, that can't be right. But it is.
Wow.
So you always have to start with the goal in mind. So decide what that goal is. And that goal, it doesn't mean you have to know what you want to do 30 years from now. I just
Right.
said 5, 10, right? If you can't think, just 5, 10. So, all right, maybe it's a business you want to start, or maybe it's a role that you're trying to get, right? You're managing, one day you want to run an operation, or maybe you're trying to create or be a thought leader in a certain area, right? It can, whatever it happens to be. To me, a goal is just something that you either want to achieve, or you want to experience, or you want to impact, right?
Yeah.
Those are goals. So, okay, now that you have your goal, the first question I ask myself is, what has to be true? So when I decided I wanted to be a CEO, I said, all right, what has to be true for me to be a CEO? Well, at the age of 16, did I have any idea what had to be true to be a CEO? No. And most times, you don't know either. You'll pick that goal and you won't know either. That's okay. The good news is, especially today with the internet, back in the 80s, there was no internet.
Right.
You do the research. I call it homework. I do homework to this day, all the time. All that is getting the information you need to be able to make the best decisions that you can, right? In whatever situation that you're in. So you do the homework. So, okay, I want to be a CEO. Well, who are the CEOs? Well, go look it up. Who are the CEOs? What were their career paths? What are their lives like, right? Have they moved? Did they this, right? I did all of that. And what I learned in that process was, okay, well, first of all, I didn't see anybody look like me in those roles that I could go find. So again, odds aren't in my favor. So if I have to improve my odds, then I need the best credential I can get. Because I looked, and a lot of people had MBAs, this, that. So I said, fine, I need to go to the best school for business. So I picked Wharton, right? It's the only school I applied to. Like, take me. I don't want to go anywhere else. This is part of my plan. But the key is, for every step of the way, I also saw that CEOs back then, they had spouses that didn't work. Okay, well, there must be something to that. Why is that? They moved around often, right? A lot of times they had P&L, profit and loss jobs early in their career. I learned all of this. And then I took all that and I built, right? Then the next step is, now that I know what has to be true, how do I make it true for me? How do I make it true for me? Okay, got to go get that Wharton degree. I've got to figure out an industry to get into where I can manage a profit and loss statement fairly early on, right? I have all these things. And then you work backwards. Now there are milestones. Okay, well, how do I do that? And how do I make this happen? And how do I make that happen? And then that becomes your plan. But here's the key. A lot of people will set goals. Some people will take the time to actually say, okay, let me outline a plan. What I've found, Shalisa, is very few people make decisions every day consistent with their plan.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Very few people. And the number one area where most people don't do it is when it comes to their finances. If you have a goal and you have a plan and your financial resources are not aligned to that plan, it's going to be really hard to execute. And let me just give an example of what I'm talking about. When I came out of school, right? Everybody graduates from school. They're all excited. They get their first job. Wow, big money, right? What do? You go get an apartment. You buy a new car. You buy, right? You get all these things because you have money. What did I do? Well, I wanted this career, but my other goals were I wanted to be married if I could, and I wanted to have kids if I could. And I'd like to have kids young. So I didn't buy a new car, right? I didn't get that new apartment. I bought a used car. I did. Why? Because I needed money for childcare. Because how am I possibly going to be able to do what I need to do on my career if I don't have good childcare for when I have children? When I say align your goals, you've got to align your resources, your plans, right? That's what I mean. Make decisions every day that are consistent with what it is you're ultimately trying to do. And that's true with picking partners. It's true. I mean, people tell me, oh, I have a career plan. And when I hear that, I know they're half off. And they're half off because you can't have a career plan that's different from your life plan.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't. That's why I don't like this term work-life balance. And I know you didn't ask me about that, but to me, work-life balance are two separate things. There's work, there's life, they're separate, never to meet. And oh, by the way, a balance is static, right? Once it's in balance, nothing ever moves. Well, please, ladies,
But
whose
life
life
is
is static?
always
Whose life is static?
no.
And all of a sudden, we're going to hold ourselves in judgment against whether or not we're holding this thing static. First of all, I don't believe in that. I believe in work-life integration. Work, life together.
Wow.
Pick your priorities across your life, right? And put your priorities against that. And now make decisions. And that's what I mean by a goal, a plan. Make decisions every day consistent with that plan. And for God's sake, take help. If you're sitting there trying to figure it out all by yourself, I want you to know there isn't a person on the planet who has achieved anything of significance all by themselves.
True.
Yes.
So,
wow.
So why do you think you're going to be the first person to do it? All right. I mean, talk about odds, right? Odds are exactly zero. So what does that mean?
You're right.
That means you got to take help. You have to share what you're thinking. You have to share what you're doing so you can actually get help and support from other people. I got a ton of help in my life and my career. It's the only way it happened.
Wow.
That is an amazing answer. And the only thing I just want to comment, it's interesting, especially in my career. So I was professional writer for 30 years and then decided when I went through this transition of, to midlife, I'm going to create a startup. And so I love how you make these decisions that are all goal oriented. And so because I was always in this, this is what I do. This is what I do well. And I have finally gotten to a point where I can do it on my terms. And now I'm in a whole different dinosaur, the whole startup, ecosystem. And I have to be honest, early on, I really felt lost. Like I had the vision. I knew what I was trying to do or what I endeavored to do, but I'd never created a startup from scratch before, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've never been in that ecosystem. I've never been like a fundraiser. I've never done any of those things. And asking for help until I started this was the hardest thing I'd ever done because as a woman and, for a part of time, I was like single with my kids. I'm just used to handling business, right? I'm just used to these kids got to go to college. I got to make sure they get through it. This has happened. I got to make sure it gets done. So I was so used to that mindset of I have to do it that when I got to this and it was such a burning desire, I felt so lost for so long that I'm like, maybe this isn't what I should be doing, but I couldn't let it go. And then one day somebody was definitely like, go and get some help, girl, in the areas where you are lacking because you might have a vision, but it's not coming to fruition unless you get some people to help you. It was freeing and exhausting and defeating. It was a whole bunch of emotion at the same time, but it was the best decision. So thank you for sort of like validating that, because it was a whole different change of life late in life. So yeah.
Oh yeah. And I often say, and Shalisa, we've talked about this, and Helen as well, that sometimes the money, like we've applied for grants or pitch competitions, it's the mentorship that almost matters more. The guidance, or a team, like I've prayed for so long for team members, and as they started showing up, and it's like, this is what it feels like to have help, and and consistent help. And so it's the loneliest journey I've ever been on as a CEO. And it wasn't a part of my strategic plan. It wasn't a part of my 16-year-old goals, honestly. So, and it's so sometimes, Shelley, things kind of become a passion, right? And then you decide to get involved a little bit deeper because you see the impact you can make. And that's kind of how things went with me. And so what I choose to do is stay coachable. And your book was so impactful for me because I always stay in this place of, I'm a mom who made a difference in my kids' lives, and I know that I could do it for other people, but I don't have all the skill sets and tools to be an entrepreneur. So I have to go back and learn all of this. And so I'm constantly open and coachable and stay in that space to like, what should I do next? And Helen knows I'm always asking her, and thank God she's just been like a godsend to me. And so many other people like Shalisa and other women and men who have poured into me and said, keep going, you can do this. And so I guess I want to ask you that, like on a personal level, with your whole, like your kids and your husband and managing life. And because I stayed away from CEO or any kind of executive job thinking that it would change my life or end my life. How did you manage all that? Because I know there are people out here listening. I'm in a better place now, stability, et cetera, with a husband, and my kids are older, but raising kids in this environment and becoming a CEO, how did all that work out for you? I mean, we see how it worked out, but how did you get through those rough days?
Right. So it really goes back to the point I made before about the importance of taking help and that you're not all alone. So the best decision I ever made, people say, what's the best career decision you ever made? It was choosing the man I married. My late husband, Scotty, was an amazing partner, and that was critical, right, to all of it. The second was I learned that I needed to decide what I was willing to be judged on. And let me explain what I mean by this.
Mm-hmm.
The world will judge us, especially women, on everything. Are you reading my lips? Everything. They judge us on what we're wearing, our hair, right? Our makeup. They judge us on our weight, how we look. They judge us on our jobs, the car we drive, the vacations that we have. They judge us on how our kids look and what they do, and our spouse or our partner or our boyfriend. And I mean, we feel at our house. Oh my gosh, you walk into their home. They never say, ask your husband about their house. They ask you about that. So you feel everything, right? Your husband walks out with a wrinkled shirt and you're all upset. Why? Because you're worried about other people thinking, oh my God, your husband's walking out in a wrinkled shirt. What's right? I mean, so what does that do? Well, it makes us do everything.
Yes.
You said, you just handle business, right? Because you have so much to do. All you can do is focus on, hitting all the things that are coming at you. No. We do that only because we're feeling so judged, right? So instead of allowing the world to decide what you're going to be judged on, you decide what you're going to be judged on. And let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here, because it's the only way I see that you can actually set priorities. My daughter was born, I talk about this in the book, my daughter was born with thick curly hair, right? Thick curly hair. The best way for her to look nice and neat is brush, comb, part, braid, right? Fine. Do I know how to do that? Absolutely. At one point I had long hair, used to plait all the time. Did my late husband, all 6'2", big hands, former athlete, did he know how to part little girls' hair and plait it and put little bows and did he know how to do that? Nope. Did he need to learn? Yep, he did. Because I was not and could not do that all the time. So what did that mean? That meant that while he was learning how to brush, comb, part, and plait her hair, I couldn't redo it. If he did it and I redid it, then I was telling him he's not good enough.
Good enough.
And he's going to
Right.
say, fine, you do it. Right? That doesn't work. So what did that mean? That means my daughter, for the first 6, 7 weeks that he was really learning how to do this, she walked out of our house, going to preschool, looking pretty jacked up. I mean, we're talking crooked parts, we're talking thick braid, thin braid. You guys know what these things look like?
I
One's
do.
coming undone, right? Stuff hanging.
I
Now,
do.
do I know that when she got to school, people around would look at her and say, where's her mother? How could they let her out of the house looking like that, right?
Yeah, true.
Of course they did. Did I care? No. No. Because they don't know what's important to me and my family. And what was important to me and my family is he needed to learn how to do her hair. And honestly, after 6, 7 weeks, she walked out of the house looking fine when he did her hair. Right? So he learned. And here's the key. She was going to preschool. She's 3, 4 years old. She doesn't care how she looks.
She doesn't.
All right? So
Right.
why be judged on it? Nope, refuse. So all I'm saying is decide what you're willing to be judged on. You're not going to be judged on whether or not you got a little layer of dust in your house right now. Because you know what? That wasn't as important to you as it was to maybe go to your son's basketball game and make sure you could get that report in the next day. Right?
Mm-hmm.
No. What most people will do is they'll do both of those and they'll stay up doing the scrubbing or doing whatever it is, right? No. Decide for yourself what is important, what you're willing to be judged on, and then literally you have to let go of the rest. Because at the end of the day, it's about what you're trying to achieve in life. Right? A family who's healthy, who's safe, feels supported and loved.
Yeah.
Right? So that's all that really matters at the end of the day. It doesn't matter that some people are kind of looking at you a little scant on how your daughter's hair looks. It really doesn't matter. So what I found is when you say, how did you do it? I didn't do it all. Right? I didn't do it all. So get help. And that means having the financial flexibility, right? Make sure it's like, okay, maybe I can forego this pair of shoes and that really cute dress, because what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to hire a teenager to come, right, for 2 hours every Wednesday to help me whatever it is that needs to be done.
Right.
Right? So put your resources where your priorities are so that you can make it a tenable life. Because otherwise, you are scrambling all the time and feeling like you're just not getting anywhere. And you know what? You're not.
Right.
Yeah, I love this conversation so much because I feel like you're talking to women at every stage of their life.
Yeah.
Whoever is watching, and again, I'm really going to make sure that our girls coordinators are showing this conversation to our young girls, because we do as women get caught up in these places that
Yeah.
end up stopping us from moving forward and achieving what we want to achieve. And that you just once again broke a myth, right, of keeping our lives separate, right? Because we're taught to do that, to keep our lives separate. You just broke that myth of creating that integration for us and really embracing that's what whatever you want it to be, it should all be thought of collectively. And that's so powerful. I have to ask you too, you mentioned your husband, and I know that from you've shared obviously how he was key and core in terms of you being successful, because he was a true partner for you, and that you obviously just shared with us about how important it was to train him too to share all the responsibilities so that you could
Amen.
that you could do and go on to your success. But he did get very ill, and that was a big part of something that you had to be dealing with in your life at the same time as managing so much other success. Can you speak a little bit about how you manage those two pieces? Because I know that so many of us are dealing with a lot, right? But we don't necessarily want to share it or say it out loud because we are afraid that it will impact us in a way that we won't be able to reach our goals, or we don't even go after our goals because that's going on, and we just stay focused there and figure, well, this is what I was meant to do. So can you talk us through that a little bit, because that is such a common life experience for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just to put in context for folks who obviously haven't read the book. So my late husband was diagnosed with a terminal cancer. And when we got the diagnosis, it's like, oh, I mean, right to just everything, your whole life. And as once we got our arms around it, right? I have a lot of faith, and I'm a spiritual person, and I believe that there is a blessing in everything that happens to us, no matter how horrible it seems at the time. And so I finally got my head around what is the blessing in Scotty being diagnosed with terminal cancer, right? I mean, really, God, what is the blessing? And then I figured it out. The blessing is I and my children will live a much more intentional life because we will know that there are no promises. That there are no promises. So we will live life every day versus putting things off for a future that may never come or that we may never have the opportunity to experience. So when I told my kids that was the blessing, I then talked to my husband and we had a conversation and we agreed that we were going to live life first and fight cancer second. And what that meant was that our life was not going to be about cancer. Our life was going to be about living. And we happened to be fighting cancer. And so the way that manifested itself is Scotty would go on treatment and they wanted him on chemo all the time. And we said, you know what, not doing it. We're going to keep him on chemo until his numbers get low. And once they get low and he's feeling better, take him off chemo. We're going to travel. We're going to do things or whatever. And when his numbers get bad again, we'll put him back on chemo. So we didn't do the standard chemo all the time because that's not living life. That's just fighting cancer.
It's just fighting cancer.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting. He ended up living twice as long as they expected. And I think that's the reason why, frankly, because he had a purpose and a reason for living. It wasn't just. So at any rate, to answer your question in terms of how I did it, fast forward, we're now at the point where I don't think he's going to make it. My husband was normally about 25 pounds, and now he was down to about 165. He could barely walk. It was awful. He wasn't able to hold food down. I'm thinking, oh my God. And I'm running a company. I'm a CEO. I'm trying to get him back and forth to doctor's appointments. We're doing treatments. We're doing the whole bit. And he's in bed at home and we're talking. And I said, Scotty, this is too much. It's just too much. I cannot do all of this. I'm going to have to step out, meaning give up my role and step out of my role. And he looks at me, this man who is all emaciated, looking weak, but he looks at me and he says, Shelley, if you step out, then what the hell am I fighting for? Because then our life is only about cancer. What do you do? What do you do? Well, I did what I've done on many instances, much lower need, but many instances throughout my life. I'm like, I need help. And I literally reached out to my friends, my family. I said, all right, I need help. I will buy airline tickets. Let me know if you can come and help out, right? And helping out to me just meant get Scotty to appointments, help him with what he needs to do so I can continue to work, help with meals, help with whatever. Because the other thing is he couldn't eat it from restaurants. Couldn't eat foods that wasn't cooked at home because restaurants have a lot of
additives,
risk factors. Yeah, thank you. And
right.
he was immune compromised. So I'm like, I can't make dinner every night. I mean, think about all these things, right? Every single meal. And so here's what happened. This was in November. From November until March, the end of March, other than the week of Christmas, someone from my family or our friend group was with us, living with us. They would sign up on a calendar, take a week, take 5 days, take a weekend, whatever it could be. They'd come and help, and they'd get Scott Age's appointments. They'd do this, right, while I'm working and doing that. Friends would make meals, would drop things off. I mean, it was incredible. My entire village came to my support. Now, it goes back to what I've always said. We can't do anything of significance all by ourselves.
Right.
We all need help. And the key is asking for it. Asking for it. And what I've found is if you ask in the right way, people are willing to be helpful.
Amen.
Yeah.
But it also means that you need to live a life where you are also helping others
Mm-hmm.
because people feel that. So, people think asking for help is a weakness. And I'm telling you right now, it is a strength. It is a strength. So build that strength and start by, if it's hard to ask for help, we'll start by just helping other people and help. And as you help, you'll see that, you know what? It really is valuable. The person you're helping, it really matters. It makes a difference. And you know what? You could probably benefit from that same thing. So I
It
know I went on
definitely,
about that, but
it,
that's how I did it. That's
it
how I did it.
definitely feels like it's easier to give than receive, though. I'm not going to lie. So it's definitely a process that I've been working on, my self-care and changing how I live for the past 5 years. I have to ask you this, in thinking about your late husband and that, just sharing everything in the book. Um, do you have another book in you about helping young women find the right man? I'm just saying, because I love that you were able to identify him at 19 and say, this is where, and you had it all laid out. And I was like, I've often told my daughters, I want to like write a book that has like the checklist of all the questions you should ask before on your first date or first 2 dates. But, I see a lot of young women struggle and older women struggle with dating and finding and just a thought.
Yeah.
I think you
Can
could
I
write
just
that book,
jump
Shelley.
in right quick? And like, that was so amazing the way you said it. But I think, Shelly, for me, and I think a lot of women in general, you're used to being a giver. You're used to being the helper. You're used to coming to the aid of other people. I've never, like, if people know me, you could ask me anything. And I'm like, if I can do it, I'm going to do it for you because I just want to see other people shine. Or if you're in need, I want to, if I can give, or I'm going to do that. If I can help, if I can show up. These are things that I'm naturally, organically going to do, just my nature. What I found challenging, though, was asking for the help for me. Like, I can ask for help. Like, if I knew Rona needed help, I could ask you to help Rona. Like, that wouldn't be a problem in a minute. I'm like, but if Shalisa needs help, that has definitely been something that I've had to work on very diligently, is like help for me, because I'm more than like, I'm always gung ho to help someone else.
Yeah. Can I
Yes.
talk about that for a minute? Women, for sure, many women were raised to help from when we're little. Help your mother, help your father, help your brother, help your sister, help me, right? And we do, and we do, and we do. But I think one of the things that happens along the way is we think other people deserve the help, but we don't deserve it because we can handle it.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right? And let me tell you, you deserve it. You've earned the right to ask for help. So don't sit there thinking you don't deserve it. You don't have a right. Who are you to ask when whatever it might be, right? You absolutely deserve the right to ask for help. So see it as more of a benefit and a bonus versus something that is this weakness. And a lot of times we think, oh, if we ask for help, we're showing our weakness.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's
Or
not.
being a
It's
burden.
not.
So I don't think of it as a weakness, but
Of being
until
burdened.
maybe about, I don't know, 10 years ago, I used to think of it as like, I'm being a burden.
Mhm.
Yeah.
As opposed to now, I'm a lot better. But I remember, so I was Mr. Graves, Earl Graves from Black Enterprise Magazine. I was his personal PR manager. But before I got the job, it took like 2 months or 3 months to get that job, right? And I hadn't been working, and I was so, I mean, when my kids are home, I'd be smiles, and then as soon as they leave, I'd be hysterical. And one day I was like, I'm just gonna call and see where they are in the process. And Mr. Sobers, who was his manager at the time, the hiring manager, he said, "The squeaky wheel gets the oil, Shalisa.
Wow.
I'm glad that you called because, he said, it's good. That's what you were supposed to do. The squeaky wheel gets the oil." And I've never forgotten that, because while I was like, am I still in the running? I was like literally making myself crazy. It was just, they just had a lengthy process. And then maybe a week later, they told me you got the job. But I just know that as a woman and a woman in a big Black family or whatever, chock full of matriarchs, the matriarchs are always the ones who are handling the glue, the ones who make sure everybody doesn't get off
Yes.
the right path and we stay on the straight and narrow. And I
Yep.
think that, what's wonderful about reading your story is how much you ask for help. And you mentioned a little bit about asking the right way. Can you talk about that a little bit
Yes.
more? What is
Yes.
asking the right way for help? Maybe that would be really helpful, like tips for people who will eventually see this too.
I'm glad you said that before you answer, Shelly, because that's how we got here. I literally took the blueprint, and I've never reached out to anyone on LinkedIn, and I wrote a whole lengthy letter. I know Shelly was like, "Oh my God, who is this woman?" But that's how we're here. So you taught me to ask, and you know what? Not be afraid of the no's. And I think a lot of people can
Who's
relate to
afraid of
this
the nose?
and
Yeah.
not take it personal, because there are some times when I ask for help and it hurts. I'm not gonna lie, but it's like, okay, but that wasn't the person I was supposed to connect with, and then I move on. But you have to go through that until you find the right person. So ask, because that's a sign, as Shelly said, of strength, of being a strong
Exactly.
person.
Right. And all I mean when I say ask in the right way is ask in a way in which people will want to help you. I could come up and say, hey, Helen, I need to get this done. Can you do this, this, and this for me? Well, okay. Helen's probably going to feel a little put upon in terms of like, well, all right, you need to get it done, and now you're asking me to do it for you. She has no context. She doesn't know why. She doesn't know the right. That's not asking in the right way. Asking the right way is Helen, right? What I might say instead is, Helen, I have this project that I need to get done for so and so, right? I've run into challenges with blah, 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 blah. I know because you've done this before that you might be able to do this a whole lot faster than I could do this. If you could help me, it would mean so much to blah, 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 blah. Now, did I just ask in a way which Helen will feel valued and
Yeah.
will be more
Yeah.
likely? So when I say ask in the right way, take the time to create the context, the why, and show that you value the person that you're asking. That is what's asking in the right way.
Well, that's really very concrete, and we're grateful for that. I want to be sensitive to time. I know that you had 1 hour to give us, and I also want to shout out to everyone watching, and Rushman, Susan, and Phyllis, and Kirby and Tevra, all just echoing so much of what you're saying here about the village being important. And, I think they want you to write that book that Rona suggested, and everyone loves kind of the direction about asking and how to ask. I would be remiss if we got off, maybe just in closing, if you could just, and I just also want to shout out the link to get to Shelley's website and to get access to her book is here. The link to both Shalisa and Rona's sites are all here. Please spend some time in the comments when we're done to go and visit, and to sign up, follow everyone on social media to stay connected.
I got to give one shout out, Helen, before you close. I found this book on my desk when I was cleaning my office, and I got to give a shout out to Dr. Jones at Howard University, because you must have spoke there, I think, Shelly, back in 2019. And I never knew until I dropped my son off at college recently, and I saw all these books in her office, and I said, wait, how do you know Shelly? And she said she was here. So anyway, thank you, Dr. Jones. Thank you, Shelly, for going to Howard. And I'm so grateful to my son for bringing this book home unannounced.
Well, it all happens for a reason, for sure. I would be remiss, though, in closing, because I always want our viewers to have some action items. And I think one of the ones I just want to make sure that you give us is, how can we help women, and specifically Black women, to be able to hit their goals, support them to get into these CEO seats, into these C-suite seats, onto these board seats. These are places where, we are not represented enough as of yet. And how do we create that space and support each other to get there?
The number one thing and the easiest thing to do is shine the light on them. And what I mean by shine the light on them is when somebody does something, right? Something that's helpful, something that's impactful, makes a great point, whatever it is, Don't just sit there and nod and say, yeah, that was a great point in your head. Instead, say, Rona, that was a great point you just made about such and such. You just showed light. Now, other people who may or may not have been listening, their attention will be drawn, right? There'll be a positive respect. And Rona, therefore, she just increased, right? The awareness of what she's capable of. I'll say, Helen, did you know that Shalisa just closed like one of the biggest orders that we've ever seen? Blah, 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 blah. No, you don't. Shine the light. Talk about people and the things that they're doing and the impact that they're making. Shine the light. When we shine the light, we make more people aware of just how capable, wonderful, right, valuable we all are.
Well, I can't think of a better place to stop, although I know we could talk for hours more if we allowed ourselves to, but there will definitely be other opportunities for that. And folks, shine a light. I love that. As you know, that's what we try to do with YWTV. That's what we do with our Share the Mic Now.
You do a great job of that, Helen. You do a phenomenal job of shining the light. And we thank you. We thank you.
I have to say, and I want to make sure that everyone out there listening takes that away. There's so many takeaways from this conversation. And again, for all ages and stages of life, for sure. But definitely, please, if you have not exercised shining a light, make that a muscle that you work and activate daily and regularly, for sure.
That's right. And just one last thing, and then I'm going to say goodbye.
Please.
I do a monthly Ask Me Anything. Sign up on YouTube, Shelly Archambault YouTube channel, and you'll be notified of when the next one is. But that allows people to see a chat right in advance. So I'm still available and accessible.
So everyone, you know where to find her. Everyone, thank you so much for your time today. And everyone be well. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Take care, everybody.